So, you made it to the final part of this villainous podcast. You must be eager to begin your own villainy adventure. So let's begin the final episode of Secrets of Villainy with the most evil villain type yet. The personification of evil. Villain. The personification of evil villains, or POV for short, are creatures of pure evil. Their origin, or their creation, is some kind of horrible event in the world that leads to the creation of one of the most evil beings ever to exist. The result of these events lead up to an unnatural being of pure evil, whose only goal is to take over the world or destroy the world. POV villains are usually just like the devil. These villains are usually inhuman beings who aren't some just other species, but rather some entire new entity who is created for pure evil. These pure evil entities usually have powers beyond our imagination. These powers make these entities power hungry, and when they become power hungry, they gain the thought of them being the true dictators of all living beings. With this godlike powers, many living humans create cults and follow these evil entities like they are gods. These beings are focused on their goal of control and have no good intentions at all. They wish to rule. They do not want to share or be good as rulers, but they want to control every living being ever. So why are POV villains so good? That's really common sense. These are beings that were created to be villains. They are creations of evil. They have no good. They have no guilt. They have no reason to be bad, but they are just evil. Being evil is a way of life for them. They do not mistake themselves as the good guy or think that they are doing the righteous act. They know that they are bad. They just do not care. They also see villainy and evil not as a job or a way to gain money, but rather as a mindset that makes their entire life of evil. They want to rule this world. They want to destroy anything that stands in their way, and they love to see people suffer. They live to see evil rise in this universe. And they do it not because it's fun, but because it's their life. They are totally and utterly evil, which is why they are called personifications of evil. You cannot get more evil than this. While these beings are well known for being villains because of their evil, they are also incredible for being as powerful as they are. They have powers and abilities beyond our imagination, and it's almost unlimited for them. But what really is the icing on the cake for these guys is that most of them cannot be killed by usual means. These are creatures of pure evil, which means they're not made of flesh and blood like us, but rather something entirely different. Most of the POV villains are creatures who are considered almost immortal, which means they could live for thousands of years, and some of them have lived for that long. But it also means that most weapons and damage do almost nothing to them. They can be literally immune to most damage, or they can regenerate after taking fatal shots, or they can reincarnate. But most of the time, these villains will not be able to be defeated by usual means. These villains are allergic to death. They can avoid it for years. And with this being known, most of these villains can take entire series to be defeated. They are a powerful bunch of villains. But now it is time to go over the examples of POV villains. My first example for this type is a being who is able to shapeshift and is also a master of darkness. My first example is a coup.
Once again, I am free to smite the world as I did in days long past.
A coup is a being of pure darkness. There is nothing symbolic about that statement. He is literally part of an entity of evil who took form due to ancient magic. Due to this, he has an almost unlimited list of powers, from shape-shifting to laser beams to time travel and dark magic. All of that, and he is completely immortal. A coup is a perfect match for the personification of evil villain definition. His actual origin and where he came from is unknown. All that is known is that a very long time ago, a great formless entity of pure evil roamed the cosmos and was attacked by 3 gods who destroyed all but one speck of darkness that drifted to Earth. This small fragment of darkness created mass destruction when it landed on Earth, and then formed a dark evil land that destroyed any being that dared enter it. The humans of this land tried to get rid of this darkness using ancient magic, but it didn't work. Instead, it gave the speck of evil a form, and that form was a coup. Now, a coup is an all-powerful being who was around during the beginning of the universe, and whose only desire was to rule. Right as he took form, he gave himself the title Master of Everything Living. He saw it fit, as he was the most powerful being on this land. So powerful that no other being living could even hold a match to him. If his power wasn't enough, it was the fact that no weapons on Earth could harm him. Any and all damage done to him would be instantly regenerated, like it wasn't even done in the first place. A coup only feared one thing, and that was the sword created by the gods to be able to destroy complete evil. With unnatural abilities and the ability to regenerate any damage done to him, if it wasn't for the sword, a coup would be the most powerful villain ever to live. My next villain example was a being who used to be human, but then turned himself into something dark. My next villain is the Dark Lord of the magical world, Voldemort.
Harry Potter. The boy who lived. Come to die.
Lord Voldemort, or what he used to be called Tom Riddle, is a human wizard. He corrupted himself with dark magic and created an immortal snake being that is Lord Voldemort. As a man, Tom Riddle was a very powerful wizard, but he wanted more. He felt that he was too human, and he wanted to get rid of that human part. He used ancient dark magic to get rid of what humanity he had left, and as well as make himself immortal. His goal as a villain was to create a world with only magical beings, and to get rid of all muggles, who are humans with no magic, who he saw as lesser beings. He is a power-hungry villain who wanted to rule the world without all the beings he sees as filth. Voldemort's power was extreme. He was a master of dark magic, which included the unforgiving curses. His iconic ability was the Killing Curse, which would kill any living being instantly, and he used it without remorse. But he also gained darker powers through his path of using dark magic to become inhuman. He jinxed his own name, so that whenever someone said it, he would know. He possessed people's bodies and used them as his own puppets. And his most impressive power was his immortality. Voldemort split his own soul into fragments and then used a dark magic called Horcruxes to put his soul fragments within. As long as these Horcruxes existed, he could never truly die. Voldemort wasn't born a personification of evil villain. He made himself an immortal inhuman being that was a personification of evil villain. His true goal was to purify this world, but his meaning of pure was to kill all the muggles in the world, as well as to have all the other magical beings in this world bow down to him. He was a wizard to fear, as they needed 7 entire films just to defeat him. My next example of POV villains is a villain so powerful and so power hungry that he would do anything for power. My next example is the true Lord of the Ring, Sauron. Sauron, who used to be known as Merrin, was a great smith of the first era of Middle-earth, but then got corrupted by a dark god. Before his corruption, Sauron saw it that all the beings of Middle-earth lack order. After his corruption, he saw it that he was the one who should control all the beings for their own benefit. Throughout his life as a villain, he was determined to take over all the lands of Middle-earth and control them as he saw fit. Now, like all POV villains, Sauron was not easily killed. He belonged to a race of immortal beings called Antibirth. They are one of the oldest and mightiest beings ever to be within Middle-earth. Sauron, being one of these mighty godlike beings, was not only given the ability of not aging, but can also survive death, since he was a spirit and could survive without a mortal body. Now Sauron was more than an immortal being. but he was one of the best smiths among these immortal beings. As well as being a smith, he was also a great leader, being able to command some of the biggest armies ever. And he used this skill to create objects of pure evil. First, he created an army of orcs that were used to attack the kingdoms of humans and elves. Then, he created the ring. The one ring to rule them all. It was a ring that corrupted the mind of the wielder and turned them into a power-hungry, deceiving, and angry being. But when Sauron wields the ring, he becomes all-powerful, to where no man could defeat him. He created this object to achieve his goal, to control and twist all the minds of Middle-earth. Sauron is basically the most powerful dictator ever to live. He was a being next to a god with the lust and desire for power, which made him a powerful villain. He used his power to rule over his land of Mordor, a land of ash and lava, where he created armies and plotted to take over Middle-earth, and his power allowed him to create attacks without strategies and still overpower the armies of man and elves. He is a powerful villain, so powerful that when you see him in the movies, that is his weakened state. And yet, he is still powerful enough to create armies and corrupt the minds of some of the strongest beings in Middle-earth. Now for my final example, it is a villain that I find to be one of my personal favorites and is iconic everywhere. It is the hidden Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Sidious.
Everything that has transpired has done so according to my design. Your friends up there on the Sanctuary Moon are walking into a trap, as is your rebel fleet. It was I who allowed the Alliance to know the location of the shield generator. It is quite safe from your pitiful little band. An entire legion of my best troops awaits them.
Oh, I'm afraid the deflector shield will be quite operational when your friends arrive.
Emperor Palpatine, or Darth Sidious, is a Sith Lord who mastered the art of the dark side. His main goal was to rule the galaxy, with him sitting on the throne as Emperor. Sidious is a Sith Lord. They are Jedi who fall to the dark side of the Force and use anger as their source of power. Sith Lords are extremely powerful in the Force, so powerful that they can even escape death. This being said, Sidious is one of the strongest Sith Lords ever to live. He was one of the only Sith Lords ever to successfully take over the galaxy, and he did this from controlling things from the shadows. He created several plans to bring upon the destruction of the Galactic Republic and build the Empire with him as the head. And these plans were usually undetectable due to their indirect ways to bring down the Republic while they were distracted by the war. Sidious was able to fool all the Jedi and destroy almost all of them while he took his new throne as the Emperor of the Galactic Republic. Sidious was cunning in his actions. He never did his own dirty work. And with his deceivious ways, the Jedi never found out that he was the Sith Lord. Even with his shadowy ways, he was still a powerful foe. He has several abilities, some that seem unnatural. And with his desire and determination to gain his goals, he stayed alive for many years before his final demise. Being this powerful as a Sith Lord, it took 9 entire movies to finally, truly defeat him. Personification of Evil Villains are creatures that take all the good traits of other villains and add it to one being. These guys are the top of the pyramid when it comes to being a villain, which is why we can finally answer the question that personification of evil villains is the best type of villain.